Quoting from page 38, the ranking member. With that, I yield back. Mr. Quigley, and I reclaim my time. Thank you. I respect you all. I don't respect this process of what you are doing. And I am from Chicago. And you know, the reputation I have lived with most of my life, working first as a staff person for the Chicago City Council, I saw the worst of the worst. They got nothing on you. They got nothing on you on this one, folks. This is extraordinary. And I know what's important here. Let's make sure the White House gets a copy of this first, because that's who we're all working for, apparently. Thank you. I yield back. Quoting from page 39, the chairman, Ms. Sewell. Ms. Sewell, colleagues, I try to use my voice sparingly on this committee because I have such deference to the fact that I think all of us care about our national security and take seriously our jobs. But I have to tell you how disappointed I am. It's a sad day to be on this committee. And I never thought I would say that, since I thought this committee was the committee that really took seriously our national security, and people put their own views and their own party's interests aside and tried to do what's in the best interest of all of us. I just wanted for the record to say that I am very disappointed in all of us that we have gotten to this place. This is from the Intelligence Committee on Monday. They're meeting on Monday, quoting members of Congress Mike Quigley there and Terry Sewell from the transcript that's just been released, where this committee is fighting tooth and nail over whether House Republicans in the White House are going to release a classified memo that disparages the FBI and tries to undermine the Mueller investigation. And now that this transcript is out, we actually know how it got to this huge standoff, which we're in tonight, and which has caused the FBI to make this remarkable public warning today about the dangers of what the White House and Republicans are about to do. Quote, the FBI was provided a limited opportunity to review this memo the day before the committee voted to release it. As expressed during our initial review, we have grave concerns about material omissions of fact that fundamentally impact the memo's accuracy. So that was a statement from the FBI today. Here was Congressman Eric Swalwell of California pleading that case against that vote before the vote happened. He says, it was our belief, and it still is, that there was a cooperation agreement between our committee and the Department of Justice, that there would be limited access to the most highly sensitive of materials as it relates to Russia. And we have seen the majority break that agreement by releasing a 4-page memo to the whole House. We are violating an agreement with the Department of Justice. We are talking about the most classified materials. And I take it, Mr. Chairman, as a privilege to serve on this committee. We are each one of 22 individuals who are trusted to conduct oversight of our intelligence community. If we were to put out to the public the most sensitive materials that they have trusted us to look out without asking them to conduct a review, without collaborating together to make sure that inaccuracies are not disseminated to the public, then we will break trust with them. And we may not see the effect of it today or tomorrow, but I promise that as we bring them in on other non-Russia-related matters, they are going to be more guarded. They're not going to trust us because we will have broken an agreement and aired for the whole public something that we have been trusted to conduct privately. Congressman Eric Swalwell. So they met on Monday for this fight. We got the transcript today, as we learned that the Deputy Attorney General and the FBI Director have gone personally to the White House to warn the White House, to tell them how dangerous it would be to release this classified information. Beyond that, we understand that the FBI further sent subject matter experts to the White House to tell them more specifically about the danger this release of this type of classified information would pose. Now, one major fly in the ointment about those warnings is the question of whether the White House itself may have been involved in cooking up this classified memo to attack the FBI. This is from page 23 of the transcript just released today. Mr. Quigley, let me ask you another question, with the greatest respect. When you, as the majority, conceived of doing this memo for the release to the body and to the public, the preparation, the thought of doing it, the consultation of it, was any of this done after or during conversations or consultations with anyone in the White House? Did they have any idea you were doing this? Did they talk about doing this with you? Did they suggest it? Did you suggest it to them? Did you consult in deciding how to go forward with this before, during, and after this point right now? Chairman Devin Nunes. I would just answer, as far as I know, no. Mr. Quigley. Mr. Chairman, does that mean that none of the staff members that worked for the majority had any consultation or communication at all with the White House? Chairman Nunes. The chair is not going to entertain a question by another member. Do any other members wish to be heard? Your time has expired. Quigley, does that mean just questions you don't like, or questions in general, sir? Nunes does not respond to that. The leader of the House Republican effort to undermine the FBI's investigation, House Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes, refusing to say whether or not his staff wrote this classified memo that they're about to release now in consultation with the White House. I know that just sounds like a process thing, but think about that. If that did happen, he won't answer whether his staff wrote it in conjunction with the White House. We know his staff has worked in conjunction with the White House on defending them from the Russia investigation in the past. If this happened, if his staff worked with the White House on making this thing, then this current firestorm in Washington is about the White House releasing an anti-FBI document that it helped create to try to undermine the FBI investigation into itself, into the White House. So this is the White House putting out a document that it wrote to defend itself against the FBI's investigation and releasing classified information in the process. I know you probably wouldn't wish a life in Congress on your worst enemy, but these kind of fights that they're having, it shows you why it really matters who's there. And sometimes they deal with stuff that is not just consequential, it is freaking compelling to read it word for word. I told you this was going to be a really big show. We'll be right back with a reporter who's right at the heart of this story. Stay with us.
You're watching MSNBC International.
It's deeply troubling, the dysfunction and distractions, constant distractions in the White House. Last week, somebody said it was like the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones, with people coming and going and getting, I'm going to fire everybody, and it was really wild.
Do you watch that like everybody else does and just say, like, what the heck is going on?
You talking about Game of Thrones or the White House?
Both, but the White House in this case.
Flight 800. We had reports of a plane down, absent any graphics. We weren't quite up to the challenge of an instant map. There was a young man on our staff who remembered he had a road atlas in his trunk showing New York's Long Island. Without that, we wouldn't have had any visuals, any graphics at all. I remember seeing the flickering. That's fuel burning on the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. It was so sad for so many reasons.
You know, it was a day like any other.
What are they doing up this early?
We came around the table with friends and family members, world leaders and world-class thinkers. We had Democrats, Republicans, even one or two with an independent streak. We were there to exchange ideas, have a conversation, and even laugh, just like we've been doing for the past 10 years. So we really want to thank you for making us a part of your morning routine. Thank you for being part of our family.
Tomorrow's headlines before they go to print.
I've just been handed some great reporting.
Tomorrow's questions before anyone's asked them.
Could you make an obstruction case?
I think I could.
Tomorrow's conversation tonight.
Who is there to stand up to the boss and speak truth to power?
Not a single person.
The 11th hour with Brian Williams.
Another remarkable night for journalism.
More than the day that was, it's the day that will be.
How does this end?
The 11th hour, weeknights on MSNBC.
Why? Because I love the magic of politics. When the stars align against the odds, when a leader somehow happens. I love the sheer human spirit of the maverick, the pro, the hero. You can have the one-note wonders, the flip-floppers, the hacks. Give me the gutsy, the grown-ups, the honest. Give me the ones with fire in their bellies, the ones who tell you why they're there. Those I can take and cheer non-stop.
News doesn't just break.
It's Old Texas Church right over there where a gunman opened fire.
Months of no power and no water.
It splinters in different directions.
As Donald Trump seeks to tighten the vice on North Korea.
It takes unexpected twists and turns.
Paul Manafort's turned himself in at the FBI.
And our trusted NBC News journalists will guide you through every one.
President Trump sparking controversy once again.
So wherever the story goes.
How is this White House going to answer this question tomorrow?
You'll be right there with it.
Before it was the biggest political scandal in history, it was just an office building, Watergate. We know its name because there were reporters who never stopped asking questions. Now, who knows where the questions will take us, but I do know this. I'm not going to stop asking them.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, only on MSNBC.
Just as we were getting on the air tonight, Reuters was first to report that the classified memo written by Republicans in the House, memo alleging surveillance abuses by the FBI in the Russia investigation, that memo is likely to be released tomorrow by the White House. This comes despite repeated warnings from the FBI and the Justice Department that it would be dangerous to national security to do so, but a White House official reportedly says to expect this release tomorrow. NBC News has now confirmed that report. A senior administration official confirming to NBC News that the Nunes memo will likely come out tomorrow. That official also tells NBC that there could be redactions from what was originally in the memo, but we won't know what those are till we see them. And because we're apparently still having the news equivalent of a super blue blood moon, the New York Times has now, just moments ago, broken news about how exactly the special counsel is homing in on the Trump Tower meeting between the campaign and Kremlin-connected Russians. And even more tightly than that, the Mueller investigation homing in on the Trump administration response to that story getting out. The Times is reporting tonight that Mark Corallo, a former spokesman for the Trump legal team, is, quote, planning to tell Mr. Mueller about a previously undisclosed conference call with President Trump and Hope Hicks, the White House communications director. Mr. Corallo planned to tell investigators that Mrs. Hicks said during the call that emails written by Donald Trump Jr. before the Trump Tower meeting, in which the younger Mr. Trump said he was eager to receive political dirt about Mrs. Clinton from the Russians, she reportedly said that those emails will never get out. That left Mr. Corallo with concerns that Ms. Hicks could be contemplating obstructing justice. Now, we should note that Hope Hicks's lawyer denies this account, telling the Times tonight she never said that. The idea that Hope Hicks ever suggested that emails or other documents would be concealed or destroyed is completely false. Oh, but it goes on. Joining us now is Ken Dilanian, national security reporter for NBC News. Mr. Dilanian, it's great to have you with us tonight.
Nice to be with you, Rachel.
I don't really know where to start. Let's start with the memo. The FBI has made what looks to a lay observer like me has taken an extraordinary public position that this should not happen, what the White House is about to do. But it sounds like the White House now feels they're good to go and they're going to release it tomorrow.
This whole thing is extraordinary from start to finish. Yes, that statement by the FBI was absolutely extraordinary, but it was extraordinary that members of the House got access to a classified FISA application. That does not normally happen. And it's further extraordinary that they're now making moves to make that public, even though without the normal classification review that tends to happen when we declassify things. Now, you and I are journalists. We're in favor of transparency. I want to read all this stuff, right? But the way this has happened is so disturbing to people on the Republican and Democratic side of the aisle who have worked in the intelligence community. My sources are beside themselves. This threatens, they say, to blow up 40 years of congressional oversight of intelligence.
Wow. And let's break that down a little bit. The reason they got access to this information is because even though the Justice Department and the FBI went directly to the Speaker of the House and to the White House to say, this is inappropriate, we should not be required to hand this stuff over, Speaker of the House Paul Ryan and the White House apparently pushed for it to happen anyway. And then, according to this transcript that was released today about the intelligence from the intelligence community meeting on Monday, it sounds like the Justice Department and the FBI handed over this very sensitive information with the understanding, they thought they had an agreement that it would not be disseminated. And then House Republicans turned around and spread it to the entire House and now are giving it to the public.
That's what it looks like. And this is a special case because there is a legitimate oversight function here on the Russia investigation. But normally, pending criminal investigations are not briefed to Congress. The Justice Department has a very hard line. You'll remember that James Comey refused to acknowledge before the election that the FBI was investigating Donald Trump. Even after Senator Harry Reid raised a stink and said, you have this information, he wouldn't talk about it, even privately. So that's not normal. Now we know there's an investigation, but they tend not to turn over these highly classified pieces of evidence in a pending investigation. They've done that because the Republicans are saying, look, we have a legitimate oversight function here, and that's true, but to make it public is a whole other kettle of fish.
Do you think that it is, again, just to kind of reestablish norms here, or at least remember what they were, is it actually a scandal that the Justice Department and the FBI handed over this information when it was demanded?
No, I don't think it is. I mean, I think, look, you know, the Congress has a right to
But even in ongoing criminal investigations? Well, I mean, we all know that's a great way to say, no, you're not getting it. It's an ongoing criminal investigation.
The problem is what they're doing with it. And as you read Eric Swalwell saying, they're never going to give this stuff again. I mean, they've poisoned the well here. There's always a worry about what do we turn over to the Hill because it's going to leak, it's going to be made public. And their sort of worst nightmare for the intelligence agencies is coming true with this.
Now, the New York Times is reporting. The headline is Mueller zooms in on Trump Tower cover story. I looked at that headline and was like, yeah, we know that. Like, this is part of what they've been looking at in terms of whether or not, misleading the public about their contacts with Russians may have crossed some sort of line into obstruction of justice or some other criminal activity. What's new about this is what seems to be pretty specific allegations from somebody who used to be on Team Trump, Mark Corallo, who's a spokesman for the Trump legal team, saying that Hope Hicks, during this call, Hope Hicks said that these emails written by Donald Trump Jr. that gave lie to the statement that was being constructed on Air Force One, including partially dictated by the president himself, that those emails, quote, will never get out. That's a very serious assertion.
That seems deeply significant to me. You're right. You had to read a lot of paragraphs into that story to get to that nugget of news. But, I mean, and we'll recall that she's a 28-year-old political neophyte, but this is a serious matter. And Mark Corallo resigned in the wake of this. And in the Michael Wolff book, he alleges that Mark Corallo did it because he was concerned that this was obstruction of justice. And now we know, according to this story, the details that Hope Hicks is essentially implying that they can make these incriminating emails go away. Of course, they couldn't, and it became one of the defining stories of this whole investigation. And I think the special counsel still has questions that are not answered in this article about why Donald Trump, in particular, insisted on drafting that statement the way he did. And this does sort of spell out a little bit what might be a problem for the president in that regard. This is describing, towards the end of the article, it's describing a call between Hope Hicks and Mark Corallo, according to 3 people who relayed his version of events to the Times. And Mr. Corallo is not disputing any of this account, which was relayed to the Times by 3 people who he supposedly told at the time. Hicks was reportedly told by Corallo that she was either being naive or she was suggesting that emails could be withheld from investigators. He described himself as concerned, alarmed, that she had said that in front of the president without a lawyer on the phone, and that conversation could not be protected by attorney-client privilege. That implies the president having legal liability over the falseness of that statement. It absolutely does. And now it's not only known to the special counsel, but it's known to the rest of us. The news story in the New York Times is Mueller zooms in on Trump Tower cover story. The news story reported first by Reuters and confirmed now by NBC News is that the Republican memo, based on classified information that the FBI and the Justice Department say will be dangerous to release, is nevertheless going to be released in some form tomorrow by the White House. There remain unanswered questions as to whether or not that memo was in part authored, either in conjunction with or by the White House, which sort of changes the whole cast of this. Ken Delaney, national security reporter for NBC News. Good to be with you, Rachel. I feel like we still just started. All right, lots more to come tonight. Stay with us.